everybody. Thanks for hanging in there as we got kind of a late start this morning. You know, I'm not one to blame Mercury retrograde, but why not? I mean, sometimes these technical things, and I would just say, I still don't know too much about it and working through everything every single week. So thank you for just being patient, and thanks for starting to come into the chat room. Hey, Leslie, it's good to see you, and there's other people there, but let me just get this show on the road. So welcome and thank you very much for being with me. This is Everyday Astrology with C.A. Brooks, and we are broadcasting on my YouTube channel that is of the same name, Everyday Astrology with C.A. Brooks. So thanks for being here. This is July 14th, 2026. And I do have a guest today, the amazing Mo Abdelbaki, Vedic astrologer and tarot master. And you will know him because he does his own show here on YouTube, Mo's Paisley Penny Arcade. You can listen to that on Wednesday afternoons when it's live streaming, or of course you can catch it as an archive later. And of course you can find Mo in other places too. He's been around, I want to say forever. And sorry, Mo, for saying that, but some of us, it feels like we have been around forever. And Mo, teaches tarot. He does all kinds of things, both in person and online and that sort of thing. He has his own, I think maybe more than one YouTube channel. So he can mention that if he likes when he comes on the air. But Mo, thank you so much for being with me today. And of course, what Mo and I will be talking about is the week ahead. And anything beyond that, whatever comes into our minds and feels like, we want to talk about on this Tuesday with a new moon in Cancer. It's the beginning of a brand new lunar cycle. So usually lots of things can kind of pop up in a week where, we're kind of closing out one cycle and opening something else. But be sure to check out Mark's Power Peak. I always like to plug that because I write a weekly column in which I describe what every single day, what the astrology is for that day, and just my take on some of the energy and maybe the way it's going to influence us. I see it as a weather report, not a prediction. So please check out Mark's Power Peak. You can subscribe for free at 12house.com or at 12listen.com. Just find those links and go ahead and subscribe. So I know we're running a little late, so I do want to introduce the show because as much as I love having Mo on the show, this is a big week in terms of astrology from the Western perspective. And of course there's different systems of astrology. I'm a Western astrologer, but this is what I would consider to be a special week or a gold star week. And I'm going to explain just a little bit about why that is, and then we're going to get Mo on the show. But the reason is because Uranus, the planet of breakthroughs, the one that we associate with innovations and original behavior and just being able to move through restrictions and limitations in our lives. Uranus is making important, I consider them two profound planetary connections this week. Now, in truth, Uranus makes 3 planetary connections this week because the first one was actually yesterday with Venus. Uranus was square Venus yesterday. Now, I'm not considering that one of the profound connections, even though I consider it important. But the reason I don't is because it happens on a regular basis. Venus moves pretty quickly. I mean, she's close to the sun. Her orbit is pretty quick. We're very in touch with Venus. She's pretty close to the Earth. So those connections happen, with those, what we call personal planets, Mars and Venus and Mercury. They make connections on a regular basis and pretty often. But on that note, if you were feeling a bit anxious about your finances or your relationships yesterday, or even, going into this week, that could be that Uranus square, because Uranus represents that need, here again, to break through something, to change something up. And the square between planets, to me, is it's like one of those red flags when you're driving and there's a construction zone ahead. It's a red flag saying, hey, wait, something's going on here. You may have to take a detour. There's a change that's needed. A square means an adjustment. needs to be made. So, hey, slow down, take a look, something needs to change. So, if you're feeling a little antsy, or you were yesterday, about anything connected to Venus, which is what we value, which of course is resources, money, love, partnership, well, then that may have been that square saying, hey, wait, slow down, take a look at something. But what makes this a gold star standout week is the following. Uranus is actually going to make a positive sextile to Neptune. That's 60 degrees apart. That's going to happen tomorrow, Wednesday, July 15th. And it's going to be perfect. And I'm stressing perfect for a reason. First of all, because these are slow-moving planets, they don't make these alliances very often. But because relatively, they've got those long orbits around the sun, and they don't make these connections very often, they stay within that connection. And in this case, Uranus stays in this connection with Neptune for about 2 years. And I'll explain a little bit more about that. But it's perfect tomorrow. So that's why I wanted to make sure that we talked about it. Now, also, Uranus at the end of the week on Friday is making a perfect trine. That's another very positive connection to Pluto. That's going to happen on Friday, July 17th. So what makes us kind of sit up and take notice? Well, these are powerful planets. And when I say powerful, it does have to do with those long orbits, because it means, I don't want to call them wallpaper, but these are things that are going on in the background that stick around for a while, like I said, up to 2 years or so, but they're really coloring something in our lives. And often I think if we look retrospectively, we may say, oh yeah, when Venus was square Uranus, I met somebody, or my relationship took this turn. But oftentimes, if we look at some of these longer transits, some of these more, here again, important or profound, we're going to go, oh yeah, that was a period of time in which this is what was going on for me. Sometimes those changes, they seem abrupt, but there's something that takes time to really settle into our lives. And that's what's going on. So in the case of Uranus in Gemini, forming a sextile with Neptune in Aries, we're in the midst of 5 different perfect connections. And what that means is, see, Uranus and Neptune go into those retrograde cycles, right? So they're kind of dancing in and out of a couple of degrees over that 2-year period. And 5 different times, they actually make the perfect connection. Now, they already did make it once. That was in August of 2025. But they're going to continue after tomorrow to make it 3 more times through 2027. So here again, we may talk about this again. We probably will talk about it again, but recognize something magical, something interesting, something that could be fabulous is happening in somewhat the background of our lives, with Uranus making that connection to Neptune. But in the spirit of this kind of energetic fusion, try not to be too rigid with the timing, or too rigid with your definitions or your expectations, because it is going to take time. And sometimes it really is in retrospect when we see what's really going on. And to give you another perspective, the last time that Uranus and Neptune danced around together like this for a couple of years was between 1966 and 68. Now, if you think about that, if you were alive during that time, or even if you weren't, that was a pretty exciting time in which a lot of things were happening on a global level. But for many, many people, that was also a time that really left a mark on their lives. So what can we anticipate? Well, if we're connecting the dots, go back to the basics. Uranus in Gemini is a rule breaker. It comes up with tons of brainstorms about how to solve really intricate puzzles and not so intricate. So never one to kind of let the obstacle, the problem, or the limitation stand in the way. Uranus envisions openings. Uranus is clever. It's original. It says, I'm thinking outside the box. It's looking for an opportunity or solution. This is not one of the planets that goes, well, I guess this is what it is, It says, no, there's got to be a way to solve this. There's a genius way to solve this. I just need to open myself up to whatever the solution is. So Uranus is known for brilliant flashes of insight and genius. So for us, we just need to get out of the way and be open to solutions. When you're facing an issue, when you're facing a restriction or what you consider a problem, what if you just moved away from the solution? Well, let Uranus just kind of show you what it is. Just open your mind to that. And by the way, have your notebook ready in case you want to take notes, or your phone so you can video it. You can record your notes, your feelings about it. And Neptune is the creative dreamer. So that's the other part of this equation. Neptune is very spiritually inclined, and it's the planet of transcendence. Now think about that word. That means the ability, the desire to move beyond the trappings of the physical universe, the physical body. And in Aries, we're really passionate about hope and following a dream, or maybe having an adventure. So when you put Uranus, the rule breaker, together with Neptune, the creative dreamer, well, you're giving birth to experimental thinking and imagination. We're open-minded, we're visionary, we're inspired. We're letting those two planets and their energy really influence us that way. We're coming up with unusual ideas. And in fact, we might also find, even if we're one of those people that say, I never have an original idea, we're more open to hearing things that are kind of outside of our norm, outside of what we would ordinarily hear or be talking about. And we're embracing ideas like freedom and individuality and disengaging from systems that limit or discourage thinking for ourselves. And, we've all been in them, right? Where whether or not it's a cultural thing, a family thing, a religious thing where we're kind of told what to do and what to think. Well, Uranus is going, I want to think for myself. So we really are rethinking the people, the situations, the systems that guide us and influence us, all of them. And I would say identifications with labels, well, we're really breaking those habits too. So, but this being the case, I also want you to know it's certainly not just something personal, because this kind of combination of two outer planets represents a unique opportunity to really synchronize our ideas and energies with other people. So what we also tend to see, and here again, go back to the 60s, and I'm sure Mo will have some thoughts about that too. It's about creating kind of a cultural shift, innovative and creative solutions for both personal and collective problems and issues. It's about liberating ourselves from some of these ideas. So even though it seems like an individual process, when we're doing it, we may be doing something on an individual basis, but it's most likely that we're also contributing to some kind of a positive influence on the collective, whether we're doing it on purpose or not. So the other thing you might want to think about is when I'm looking at what I want and what kind of change I want, can we really want that for ourselves without wanting it for everybody else? Everybody else wants that kind of freedom too. So now I'm going to just check in really quickly with Uranus trine Pluto. Now, this is an even stronger alliance, more so than the sextile. Let's put it that way. And once again, it occurs in a series. In this case, 5 perfect alliances beginning on Friday. And then they end in May of 2028. But of course, the influence doesn't end then. But once again, just think about it. This is going on for some time. But it's an exciting thing. So just kind of tuck it away and put it in the back of your mind. Now, one thing about these two, though, they don't have this regular habit. So sometimes they do this every 100 years. Sometimes they do it every 35 years. Sometimes it's 37 years. Lord knows. And I guess that has to do with Uranus, because Uranus is quite the unusual planet and character anyway. But the last time there was a perfect trine between Uranus and Pluto, at least from what I've been able to figure out, and I'll keep digging to make sure this is right. The last time was 1921 and 22. So it's been quite a while, more than 100 years. What is that, 105 years since this has happened. And here again, you know what Uranus is, but Pluto is a planet of transformation. It's a planet that truly goes in there and just revitalizes everything. And here again, the changes can be both personal and communal. They're likely to be both. And they're going to, you're going to hear more and more. It's going to be about freedom and self determination and personal empowerment. But Pluto, remember, provides the impetus to eliminate the old and the obsolete, and then to embrace evolution, renovation, redesign, rebirth, and literally reinvention. So that's one thing we're doing is we're reinventing ourselves and the facets of our lives. And because Pluto is actually in Aquarius, well, do you know which planet rules Aquarius? It's Uranus. So this is like, to me, it's very supercharged with all of that kind of Uranian and Aquarian and humanitarian energy. So what I'm going to expect is that we're going to see big, big, big changes, historic shifts in social organizations, in political systems, and most notably in communications and technology, because that's what Uranus and Aquarius rule, or what, that's kind of their thing. So as these planets are working together, I think there are going to be profound changes in our personal awareness and the ways that we work together on shared goals. That's a very Aquarian thing. Working together towards shared goals, but things that work well for individuals at the same time. So, that whole Chinese thing about we live in interesting times. Well, I think we truly do live in interesting times. So that's kind of the summary of what's going on this week. And of course, there's a new moon in Cancer today that already happened. That was this morning. But we also, please, read the Power Peak. There's some really cool stuff going on towards the end of the week, on Sunday in particular, because Mars is in Gemini and it's going to be connecting with Saturn. And there's also a grand trine in air, which means all kinds of really interesting, communications and things going on Sunday. So with that, though, I want to get Mo on the air. Hey, Mo, are you there?
I'm here.
Oh, okay. And the sound is a little muffled, just a little bit.
I don't know why. I'm totally without knowledge. Okay, all right.
Okay, we're going to let Mo just hang up and call us right back. And so, Mo, as soon as you do, let me know that you're there and we will do it. So meanwhile, I'm going to go over to the chat room and say hello to everybody. Hey, it looks like lots of people over there today. Thank you. Oh, there's Mo. Everybody in the chat room, thank you. Yeah, Mo, you there?
I'm here.
Okay, it's good for now. It's good for now, Mo. I'm just not sure what's going on.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
No, well, and I'll tell you, I don't either, because if I did, I'd tell you. So anyway, I was really thinking about you with all that talk about the 60s, though. And of course, I'd like to announce that Mo is a Vedic astrologer, even though he knows quite a bit of Western. But his system is a little bit different. And they do not use the planets Pluto, Uranus, or Neptune. Right. And so sometimes when I'm talking about all those planets, I thought maybe that wasn't a good day for you to be on the show when so much is going on with those. But you certainly have an opinion about the 60s and the kind of energy that was going on. And here again, even though your system doesn't use Uranus, you certainly have that whole concept of innovation and, turning things over and, the whole idea of reinventing yourself. All of those concepts are still within the Vedic system.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, tomorrow on my show, I'm going to be talking about the Fool quite a bit, and where the Fool came from. Actually, a lot of people think they know. They probably don't. So,
hey, and you know what, Mo? The sound is bad again. And maybe in the chat room, people can let me know. Are you being able to understand, Mo? I'm looking if anybody wants to post something there, that would be good. And so, Mo, are you going to hang up and try calling again?
I guess. Sure. Why not?
yeah, we're feeling like it's going to be really hard for people to understand.
Okay, let me try it again. Let me give it a shot. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, everybody, you know what? Meanwhile, I am going to look at your questions in the chat room. And I'll tell you what, if we are not able to get Mo on the air, I will take some of your questions from the chat room and see if we can explore those in a little more depth. So, good morning. You know, I see a lot of that. Thank you so much. Okay, Leslie is saying, would love to hear what you both say about this configuration for those of us who have Pluto and Uranus conjunct, if possible. Okay, and also somebody else, 66 to 68 was so powerful in my teen years, went from trying to fit into my parents' vision to marching with my friends to that different drummer. Oh man, for sure. Oh yes, and thank you for James and Leslie. You're telling us, yeah, that there is distortion and there is static. So that is really helpful, you guys. Thank you very much. And hopefully we will get Mo to call us back. All right. So yeah, I'm going to try to just kind of tackle these. And sorry, we're just kind of going off the cuff, but we're going to play a little bit more with Pluto. So you got Pluto and Uranus conjunct. You there, Mo?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
It's good right now, Mo. So talk away and don't move.
Is it any better?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Hopefully this will work.
Okay. All right. And so, you know, take it away. And you can also, you know, if you want to address Leslie's question about how do you think this could affect somebody who is already born with that kind of energy, Pluto and Uranus conjunct in her chart. That's a little bit different than the trine, of course. But anyway, what are your thoughts about what we're talking about, Mo?
Oh, about, well, individuality, I think you were mentioning, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
People wanting to be individuals. So I think that's a constant when it comes to everything. People always want to be themselves. Not always. That's kind of obvious right now when you think about it. People are, there is a conformity factor in society. There's a conformity factor. We saw it in the 50s. We saw it actually in the 60s. And there are groups that want to break out and be themselves. And that is part of being different. Those of us interested in metaphysics, I think, seek being ourselves. And that's a very important part of, I think, our movement. If I can put it that way.
Yeah, and you know, the other thing I was kind of jumping to in my mind is with Jupiter in Leo right now, I feel like one of the really big things is to be authentically self-expressive.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about individuality, and you said, well, I think everybody wants to be an individual. Now, I think there are some people who what they mean by being an individual is being different. But I think what it really is just saying, I want the opportunity to really be authentic.
Yeah.
And if that looks a lot like you, that's great. But that's what I really want, is to be able to be authentic.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I mean, to be authentic. Now, our fearless leader, president of the country, is a Leo. Isn't that correct?
Actually, I know he's got a lot of Leo. I was thinking he was a Gemini. I'd have to look it up.
June 14th. So what is that? Is that a Gemini?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah, that's right.
I mean, I could pull his chart up, but he has lots of Leo. He has lots of Leo in his chart. Important Leo.
Yeah, I think he's got a bit of it, but yeah, I know that our generation was Pluto and Leo, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And our big question was we were seeking ourselves, looking for ourselves. And Leo, of course, is that big lion in the sky, the Sphinx. And part of that is about, big lion in the sky, roaring. But there's a lot to this idea of individuality, a lot to this idea of, wanting to be us when in fact you're always you, no matter what. And conformity, well, there's nothing wrong with that. It's part of the species. We seek to conform. But in the 60s, we sought to not be like the generation before us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Were you a freak at all?
I
Yeah.
would never, no, I would not describe myself as a freak, but I would
Yeah.
describe myself as fairly rebellious. But
Yeah.
I would say not in my teenage years. It
Yeah.
was more like in my 20s.
Yeah.
Um, but, interestingly enough, with Uranus, it has a cycle of about 84 years. So
Yeah.
if you start breaking that cycle down, when a child or a person is 14 to 15 years old is when one of the first squares happens in terms of that. Here again, if you considered it like a lunar cycle, that's where you start getting that first square. And it is so typical, just like Charlene was saying, wanting to fit in, not, or trying to figure out how to please parents, but to not just fit into somebody else's vision of who you are. And the
Mm-hmm.
14, 15-year-old energy is, I would say as a Western astrologer, it's perfectly aligned with Uranus making that first square. So, the child is like, yeah, I'm learning from mom and dad, I'm emulating my elders. But by the time you get to be 14 or 15 is when there becomes that awareness of, but I don't have to become that kind of an adult. Or if I'm going to start individuating, it's going to be now.
Right. Right.
So that's a typical kind of thing. And of course, isn't that maybe for many of us, what happened? We just repeat that cycle over and over again in terms of we learn from our parents. And sometimes our very behavior is shaped by trying not to be our parents.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
remember pretty much moments when I would break. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I would try to fit in or try to be good, and then I would break. I ran for student body president when I was a junior in high school, and they pulled me aside and said, "You won't win. We're going to make sure of it." And I
Wow.
didn't believe them. And my friend who was student council or student body president, he was a senior, I was a junior. He said, "They're not going to let you win." And I said, "It's crazy. You can't." He said, "No, no, I'm serious. They're not going to let you win." And I didn't win. I went to they had this big thing, and they announced the winner, and it wasn't me. And not to be paranoid, I was later told by a teacher that it had been rigged. And the moment that they announced who the winner was at this huge assembly, with parents and stuff there, and my parents weren't there, they didn't, you know, and I something inside me broke, and I said, I tried their way, now I'm going to do it my way. And that was an incredible moment for me. That's when the Uranus in me said, "All right, boy, let's do it our way," you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was really kind of an incredible moment for me, because that's when the freak really, that's the moment when I quite literally freaked out, because the term freak out in the beginning meant for your natural freak within you bloomed. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a terrible term. It wasn't, wow, you really freaked. You see Mo, man, you really freaked out. It didn't mean you
Yeah,
went nuts.
right.
It meant that you became your natural freak.
Mm-hmm.
And the next year, I didn't look different because we weren't allowed to look different. But my senior year, I became my natural freak. And then as soon as I graduated, boy, did I look different, you know. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that it was a rebellion against culture. It was a rebellion against the stifling influence of sameness that we felt. And so, yeah, I'm sure because you're not like other people. See, I've known you for a long time. There's a wildness in you, you know, if I may be so bold and not
Yeah.
offend you, I hope.
Hey, don't let
Um,
that secret out. These people think I toe the road, or toe the line. Don't you guys? You think I toe the line?
yeah, there's a there's a definite um, it's not disrespect, it's not disregard, but there's an undercurrent there, you know,
Hmm.
and it's a delightful one in my opinion.
Well, thank you.
Now, there's a friend. I have a dear friend that I've known for well over 50 years. And the first time he met me, he didn't know me. He had a job cleaning carpets with a company. He was a grad student at Colorado State, and he had come to my parents' house to clean the carpets. And I was in my full freak years at the time, and I had very long hair, and I had been out the night before, God knows doing what. And I was coming up the stairs, and they were going down the stairs with heavy machinery to clean the carpet in the downstairs area. And they were going downstairs, and I was coming up, and I apparently growled at them with my long hair. And it was early, not early, it was probably about noon, and I had probably just gotten up. And he said I literally growled at them, and they didn't know me, and I didn't know them, but I made them go back up the stairs with this heavy equipment, you know. And he said they were terrified of me. And that was the first time he ever saw me. We later became incredible friends. And he was pretty straight laced looking, you know, and so on. But we eventually became compadres, so to speak, part of the same tribe. And he's a clinical psychologist, you know. So, but that he met the freak. He met the monster. He said he thought I was a monster. That's the impression I gave people. And I think that's remarkable because he got to meet me at my most incredible state ever. And you know, we go through stages in life,
Hmm.
the wildest stages. And how many people really get to experience themselves at that point? My mother used to look at me, CA, and she would burst out in tears.
Yes, I
And
remember you saying that.
yeah, and that's the most that's the wild part of Uranus within us. You know, those are the tendrils of it. Um, when we're just completely wild and feral, I love that aspect of it.
Hmm.
Um, is do, am I wrong, or is that part of it?
No, no, like you said, it's an aspect of it. Because
Yeah,
actually, I'll tell you what the image is of a Uranus that often comes to me is a baby being born. And
yeah,
the reason is because here's this baby, it's staying in this safe womb for 9 months. And it all seems very nice, very comfortable, very predictable, right? But when it's ready to be born, to some extent, it can feel to both the baby and maybe to the mom like all hell is breaking loose, right?
right,
But
right,
I think of it as Uranus because what it says is, I have outgrown this space. I have to go on to the next phase of my life. Now, of course, that's not conscious. It's totally instinctual or whatever you want to call it. But damn, that baby's coming out,
oh yeah,
and
yeah,
it's going to push and break and do what it has to do to get beyond the confined space of where it is. And of course, that happens with every single animal, insect, whatever you want to call it. There's always going to be that time where it's to move on, to move into the next space. This has to happen. And it
right,
doesn't have to be a horrible situation by any means, but it is going to be a breakthrough. It's not going to
yeah,
be, it's not going to stay static. So, you know, that's where I think that's just a different way of looking at it. But, the other thing I'd say, like when you say I'm wild, you're not the first person who said that. And
yeah,
yet, I don't think that's really obvious because, well, let's put it this way. What I often think, and this is how it's been for me since I was a child, and this goes back a little bit to well, maybe not quite, but the person who was saying that her Pluto and her Uranus were together, which I assume must have been in Virgo. Um, but in any case, my sun is connected to by a trine. It is connected to Uranus.
Hmm.
And so there is that streak. It's like you're not going to separate Uranus from my individuality. But the difference is mine's in water. Both
Uh,
Uranus and the sun are the only two planets I have in my chart in water. And so instead of acting out, I mostly was really quiet. And what I remember a lot of is looking around at other people and maybe specifically adults when I was younger. And I just
mhm.
thought they were crazy.
Oh
I
yeah.
mean, I remember thinking, this doesn't make sense at all. What's wrong with these people? And
Yeah.
so I think I spent a lot of kind of formative years contemplating why the world didn't make much sense
Me
instead
too.
of acting out against it.
Me too. You know what never made sense to me ever?
What?
Religion. Religion.
Yes.
Ever.
Yes. Well, that was one of them. That was one of them.
Yeah. I mean, I just never and I used to watch religious shows on TV like every Sunday morning, Catherine Kuhlman and Oral Roberts and, all those shows. And I would go, what is this? What's going on here? And nothing against them. I just was
Hmm.
like, what am I watching? And I was a kid, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And I would just watch these shows and I would try it out, put my hands on the TV and see if I could feel anything. And it was like, what is going on here? I read the stories. Wow, it was just fascinating to me. I read the the Five Great Religions book when I was in the fifth grade, and just went, what is this stuff? Buddhism made the most sense to me of all of them.
Hmm.
Um, but all of that stuff just completely confounded me. I was completely vested in our metaphysical path, if you will, Tarot and all that stuff. By the time I was 6, 7 years old, I was like, this stuff makes sense. I understand this stuff because it makes sense. The rest of it was confounding to me.
Well,
Um,
you're absolutely right. And what I remember, and here again, it's more my idea to be quiet. But the few times I would ask questions that were considered inappropriate, like, what the hell does that mean? Or that
yeah,
doesn't make any sense. If I would voice a comment like that, because I was raised Catholic and I went to Catholic school, you were punished. So what I learned early in education was to just keep your thoughts to yourself,
oh yeah,
because they're not going to, I mean, they're only going to get angry if you ask why that is. And in fact, I think I've told you a story, and I won't tell you the whole thing because of time. But one of my nephews basically said to his mom, "Did you just make all this stuff up?"
yeah,
I mean, hello, and
yeah,
and he was pretty young, but it was like, hello, really, you expect me to believe this? You know,
yeah.
and
I got
that just
I got a
makes me
slap in the
laugh because,
face.
see, I would have never said that for fear
Yeah.
of being in trouble. But did I think it? Absolutely. It was like,
Um,
you guys are just like nuts. I mean, none of this is logical or makes any sense, but yeah, I'll just do what you tell me to do.
Yeah, my mom decided I needed a dose of religion, because, well, my parents were Muslim, and
Hmm.
from Egypt. And we were growing up in the United States, and so there was no mosque in Fort Collins, Colorado, and so and it was they weren't trying to, you know, foist anything upon me and so she decided to tell me the story of Moses, and which I thought was, you know, I said, we're Egyptians. They're the bad guys in this story. Help me understand this. And I was five
Hmm.
or six,
Hmm.
and I think I was six. And she told me about the parting of the Red Sea and all the curses and all that stuff. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, aren't we Egyptians? Why are you telling me this story? And it's like, God. And at the end of it, about the parting of the Red Sea and how they went through, and and all the crashing of the waters. And I said, do you believe that story? And she said, yes. I said, really? That's a fairy tale. I said, you believe that story? She said, yes. I said, then you're stupid. And she slapped me in the face so hard, knocked me down, and I just stood up and said, what's wrong with you? How can you believe that? And that did not go over well.
No.
And my dad finally, when he got home, he said from work, he said, don't do that, don't. I said, what is that? He said, that's religion, And so I spent the rest of my life trying to figure this stuff out. Because at the same time, people said, what you believe or because I lived in a haunted house and I saw a ghost. And there are people saying, no, that's not true. What you saw didn't exist. I saw it with my own eyes. No, it was wrong. You didn't believe, you can't believe, but yet you know what I'm saying?
Right.
It was really hard to come to grips with this dual reality. And yet they believe in something that I can't see. I had a real hard time with that. And so immediately I felt different and I felt not believed, and yet they believed in something that I could not relate with. I guess, wow. There, thank you, doctor. I'll pay your secretary on the way out. But it was really kind of an amazing situation. And I've always, I will admit, I have always felt different. And I imagine you have too. I think most of us who have followed this path or come to it, even those of us who have come to it later in life, I've spoken to many people, they always have felt a little bit out of place. I've always felt like I was on the outside looking in, as Devo put it, through a dirty window.
Yeah.
But I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
Would you want to be different? Would you want to be different? Would you want to be a part of that world that isn't special, that isn't, this vibrates. This is a wonderful world we live in. And it's fine until
in some ways. I was kind of thinking just the opposite of sometimes you just have to get to the place you go, this is a very broken place. It doesn't make logical sense. A lot of stuff, the parts are never going to fit together. And I'm, and can we just learn to accept that and stop expecting something to be different than it is? Once again, being idealistic about something. So yeah, it's a wonderful world that's broken, kind of cracked,
Well, that society is. That part of society is. Our world isn't. Our world makes a lot of sense.
Okay. I get, yes. There is a world that is different than what we mostly perceive.
Yeah. I love life so much because it's life, But the world that we perceive, that world of politics and that world of, that's nuts. Those people are out of their minds. They don't have any concept of what's important. What's important is family and friends and love and peace. That's what's important. That was what was important in the 60s. Friendship. I had a tribe and we loved each other. We genuinely loved each other. I remember during my freak days, which were fun days. They really were. You worked, you shoved your hair up under your cap, and you flipped hamburgers and did with the best you could do, and whatever. I was standing with a couple of my friends on a corner. It was at night, and a bunch of cowboys in a pickup truck, goat ropers they called themselves, came around the corner and screamed out, "Hey, hippies," and threw beers at us in cans. And it was incredibly painful to get hit with cans of beer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And boy, did it hurt and bruised. But we had beer.
Yeah, that's true.
And it was like, hey, hippies and bam, bam, bam. And we had these beers that we didn't have before. So, and one of the guys always carried a church key with him. For those of you youngsters who don't know what a church key is, it's a can opener.
Right.
It's a round
Get
size
those
for
beers open.
That's right. And we opened those beers and we drank them on the street, which was quite against the law, but it was like 9 o'clock at night, and what we did it anyway. And it's one of those things that I'll always remember as being, we're like, ow, 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 ow. And they threw like 6 of them at us. So we had 2 each. And it was a blessing in disguise. And I've always remembered that as one of those moments where you go, not so bad.
All right. Well, and I hate to interrupt you on a roll, but we've got 1 minute left in this show.
Oh,
and hopefully we will continue to work on all the tech stuff and make sure that, we don't get up to a late start. No. You know what, Mo, it's how it works. And here again, with all these wonderful transits going on that have to do with communication and connection, they're going to work in our favor over the next few years to really get things down pat. So don't worry about it. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Of course.
And to everybody in the chat room, and Leslie and everybody who made a comment, we will continue to talk about this. But you can be assured that if you have a special connection in your chart with Uranus and Pluto and Neptune, some wonderful things are going to happen. And with Pluto in particular, they're likely to be very cathartic, very healing on probably an emotional, psychological, and physical level. So lots of exciting things are going to happen. Let's just be open to it. And Mo, thank you. I really do appreciate, your being here and kind of working through some of the issues with the technology. It's what it is, right?
Hey, it's far out.
Okay. Anything you want to say before we close the show?
Yeah, hey, if you're interested in tarot and you want to learn some more about the major arcana, tomorrow's your day, 3 p.m. Pacific, Mo's Paisley Penny Arcade. It's going to be
on YouTube.
Show. And you can catch it in replay.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mo. And he's a great, great tarot teacher, guys. So really learn from him. I mean, I've taken several classes from Mo, and just I love the perspective. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Okay. All right. And everybody in the chat room, thank you. And, come up with some more questions, because we will continue to talk about this energy as it moves through the universe or through the cosmos. But just be aware it's out there. There really is something very special, something very magical, something very interesting going on. And let's just watch for the sparkle. Let's just watch and pay attention to our feelings. And sometimes we're going to feel good. Sometimes we're going to not feel so good. But let's just see what's coming for us, what's happening. We are going through a birthing process ourselves and as a world. So that's one of the things going on. All right. So we're wrapping it up. Thanks to Serena for being here today. I would encourage everybody to stick around. Go shift over to Empowerment with Kelly Whetstone. That's coming up next on YouTube. And I will be joining Kelly for our monthly meeting of the minds. And so come over there and find us and come into the chat room. And I will close with the quote of the week, which just sounded so, Neptune, Pluto, Uranus to me. And this is by I don't know how to say it, Epictetus, who is the philosopher, a Stoic. And he says, but what does Socrates say? Just as one person delights in improving his farm and another his horse, so I delight in attending to my own improvement day by day. And yes, this goes back to even the conjunction between Uranus and Pluto. Continual improvement day by day. Evolution, reinventing yourself in a very intentional way. So this is CA signing out. You can find me for personal sessions on one2listen.com. Please feel free to request a scheduled call at a time that's good for you. You've been listening to Everyday Astrology with my guest, Mo Abdelbaki, live streaming on YouTube, where we are changing the way that we listen to our world.